In this lesson, I want to introduce you to the power of the mind and teach you the foundation of controlling your thoughts and emotions rather than letting them control you. It's important to know that we are not helplessly at the mercy of our thoughts and emotions. We have the power in this relationship. These are the subjects we'll go over: the power of thought, self-awareness, common distorted thinking, restructuring our thinking, Socratic questioning, and disputing. This can all sound a bit intimidating, but stick with me and I'll explain things in a language I hope anyone can understand. These videos are made possible thanks to our amazing sponsors. Meet anyone for anything on the Introducer app. Whether you're looking for friends, romance, or something in between, Introducer has you covered. Download for free today. Experience a new heaven and a new earth in a virtual paradise and global community. Church has never looked like this. Your contribution can bring Earth 2.0 to life. Finally, if you'd prefer to watch these videos without ads, visit our mental wellness hub on the Happy app. Click the links in the description. There is a well-established theory in psychology that thoughts drive emotion. This started with Aaron Beck, one of the leading pioneers of cognitive therapy. There is also a massive evidence which supports this. I want to introduce you to a very dominant and well-established area of psychology, CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. According to this theory, much of our emotions are the byproduct of our thoughts and beliefs. So, emotions come about like this. 1. First comes an antecedent. This is the event or situation that triggers the thought process. 2. Then come our beliefs. These are the thoughts or perceptions that we have about the event. They can be rational, based on facts, or irrational, based on false assumptions. 3. It then triggers consequences. These are the emotional and behavioral responses to our beliefs. For example, let's say you go to work and get yelled at by your boss. That's the antecedent. Now, underneath it all, you don't have great confidence in your ability. That's your belief about yourself. You think to yourself what a failure you are, and here is the proof. Next comes the consequences. It stirs up emotions of sadness and hopelessness. That's the reason you avoid trying new things, give up easily, or isolate yourself from others. This can create a vicious cycle that reinforces your negative beliefs. What you believe, you make real. But what if you could challenge that belief and replace it with a more realistic and positive one? Like, I have strengths and weaknesses, and I can learn from my mistakes. Suddenly, we are not so passive in our thoughts and feelings. That is the next part of the equation, the dispute. In this subject, you will learn how to use these skills through various exercises and assignments. By the end, you will have a better understanding of yourself and your thoughts, and you will have a toolkit of strategies to help you master your emotions. Self-awareness is the ability to recognize your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and how they affect each other and your well-being. Self-awareness is important because it helps you to understand yourself better, to recognize your triggers and patterns, and any beliefs you might have that cause you distress or pain. Self-awareness is not always easy to achieve, especially when we are used to ignoring, avoiding, or suppressing our thoughts and feelings. Sometimes, we may not even be aware of what we are thinking or feeling, or why we are acting in certain ways. Here comes something I like to refer to as a witch hunt, where the witch is the unhealthy belief you have sometimes deeply buried down there in your psyche. Some of us might know exactly why we are sad. For others, it can be a challenge to even know the root cause. This is where going on a witch hunt is necessary. One of the best times to go on your witch hunt is when we feel that emotion. You might be going on with your day and suddenly you realize your mood has dropped and you're not sure why. Now it's time to backtrack. Did something happen recently which triggered a thought? What was that thought? It might take a few tries to be able to catch yourself here, so be vigilant. Chances are that if it's the kind of thought that is an actual problem, it's going to rear its ugly head frequently and over months at a time. Exercise. Write down 3 words that describe how you feel right now. It can be any emotion, positive or negative, such as happiness, sadness, anger, or boredom. Just write down the first 3 words that come to your mind. Done? Great. Now, look at the words you wrote down and ask yourself these questions. What made me feel this way? How does this emotion affect my body, my thoughts, and my actions? Is this emotion helpful or unhelpful for me right now? What can I do to cope with this emotion or to change it if I want to? Take a few minutes to think about these questions and write down your answers. You don't have to share them with anyone unless you want to. This is just for your benefit. This exercise is an example of how you can practice self-awareness by paying attention to your emotions and by exploring their causes and consequences. By doing this exercise regularly, you will be able to increase your emotional intelligence and manage your emotions more effectively. Cognitive restructuring is the process of identifying and challenging your negative or distorted thoughts and beliefs and replacing them with more objective, realistic, and positive ones. Cognitive restructuring is important because it helps you to change the way you think about yourself, others, and the world, and to improve your mood and behavior. But what are negative or distorted thoughts? And how can we identify and challenge them? Negative or distorted thoughts are also called cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions are irrational or exaggerated beliefs that are not based on facts or evidence, but on assumptions, interpretations, or emotions. Cognitive distortions can make us see things in a negative or distorted way and cause us to feel unhappy, anxious, angry, or hopeless. There are many types of cognitive distortions, but some of the most common ones are all or nothing thinking. This is when you see things in black and white terms, without any shades of gray. For example, if I don't get an A on this test, I'm a failure. Overgeneralization. This is when you draw a general conclusion from a single event or piece of evidence. For example, I got rejected by one person, so nobody will ever love me. Mental filter. This is when you focus on the negative aspects of a situation and ignore the positive ones. For example, I made a mistake on one question, so I ruined the whole presentation. Disqualifying the positive. This is when you reject or minimize positive experiences or feedback and think that they don't count or matter. For example, they only said I did a good job because they felt sorry for me. Jumping to conclusions. This is when you make a negative assumption or prediction without sufficient evidence or facts. For example, they didn't reply to my message, so they must hate me. Magnification or minimization. This is when you exaggerate the importance or severity of a negative event or outcome, or downplay the importance or significance of a positive event or outcome. For example, I forgot to say thank you, so I'm a terrible person. Or, I won the lottery, but it's not a big deal. Emotional reasoning. This is when you think that your feelings are facts and that they reflect reality. For example, I feel stupid, so I must be stupid. Should statements. This is when you use words like should, must, have to, or ought to impose unrealistic or rigid expectations or rules on yourself or others. For example, I should always be perfect, or they should always agree with me. Labeling. This is when you assign a negative or global label to yourself or others based on a single event or characteristic. For example, I'm a loser, or they're a jerk. Personalization. This is when you take things personally or blame yourself for things that are not your fault or responsibility. For example, it's my fault that they broke up, or they're angry because of me. These are just some examples of cognitive distortions, but there are many more. Cognitive distortions can affect anyone, and sometimes they may seem true or reasonable. However, they are not helpful or accurate, and they can cause us to feel and act in ways that are not in our best interest. That's why we need to learn how to identify and challenge them and to replace them with more balanced and realistic thoughts. How can we do that? Many techniques can help us with cognitive restructuring, but one of the most effective ones is called Socratic questioning. Socratic questioning is a method of asking yourself or others questions that help to examine the validity, logic, and evidence of a thought or belief. Socratic questioning can help us to uncover the flaws and gaps in our thinking and to discover alternative and more positive ways of thinking. Socratic questioning involves asking yourself questions such as, what is the evidence for and against my thought? Is there another way of looking at this situation? What is the worst that could happen and how likely is it? What is the best that could happen and how likely is it? What is the most realistic outcome and how can I cope with it? What are the advantages and disadvantages of thinking this way? What would I say to a friend who had this thought? What would a friend say to me if I shared this thought with them? How will I feel and act if I keep thinking this way? How will I feel and act if I change my thinking? By asking yourself these questions, you can challenge your cognitive distortions and find more rational, realistic, and positive thoughts that can improve your mood and behavior. Exercise. Think of a recent situation that made you feel unhappy, anxious, angry, or hopeless. It can be anything, big or small, that bothered or upset you. Then write down the negative or distorted thoughts that you had about that situation. It can be one of the cognitive distortions that we discussed or another type of negative or irrational thought. Just write down the first thought that comes to your mind. Done? Great. Now, look at the thought you wrote down and ask yourself these questions. Is this thought true or false? How do I know that this thought is true or false? What is the evidence for and against this thought? Is there another way of looking at this situation? How can I restate this thought in a more objective, realistic, and positive way? Take a few minutes to think about these questions and write down your answers. You don't have to share them with anyone unless you want to. This is just for your benefit. This exercise is an example of how you can practice cognitive restructuring using Socratic questioning by identifying and challenging your negative or distorted thoughts and beliefs, and by replacing them with more balanced and realistic ones. By doing this exercise regularly, you will be able to change the way you think about yourself, others, and the world, and improve your mood and behavior. For many of us, all it can take is one unhealthy belief to keep us in a place of misery, just one thorn stuck deep within our psyche. If only we were able to know what that belief was and be able to dispute it and replace it, will a healthy alternative, we would have the key to our cage to be able to walk free from this thing which is the cause of so much misery. Well, I want to help set you free. Today you become a warrior, and this is the demon we will overcome. Finding that thorn can sometimes be half the battle, but if you can find what that deep-seated belief is that is causing you so much misery, then the good news is that you have won half the battle. Time for that witch hunt. Practice what we just learned in Socratic questioning. Once you know what that unhealthy belief is, here is an exercise to try. Exercise. Take a Post-it note. Write on the back, limiting belief, and then write what the belief is underneath. Then write another heading on the front, liberating dispute. Now take that Post-it note and put it somewhere you feel comfortable, that you will also see frequently. That is now your battleground. That is your arena. It is where you will overcome your demons and is a challenge for you to dispute. How would you argue that limiting belief? Draw on the cognitive restructuring and Socratic questioning we learned in the last lesson. Once you start to find arguments for the limiting belief, write them down underneath the liberating heading on your Post-it note and go over it daily. Stick the Post-it note somewhere you are going to see a lot during the day. We're going to make a new path in the forest that your thoughts will go down. It will become a part of your reality, and you will redefine your thoughts about the world. You will focus on the liberating dispute until it becomes your healthy belief. It will be positive, it will be rational, it will make sense, and it will set you free like a key turning in a lock to the chains around your feet. That is how you take that thorn out of your psyche. It worked for me, and I know it will work for you too. These videos are made possible thanks to our amazing sponsors. Meet anyone for anything on the Introducer app. Whether you're looking for friends, romance, or something in between, Introducer has you covered. Download for free today. Experience a new heaven and a new earth in a virtual paradise and global community. Church has never looked like this. Your contribution can bring Earth 2.0 to life. Finally, if you'd prefer to watch these videos without ads, visit our mental wellness hub on the Happy app. Click the links in the description. Finally, although this course was free for you, it was not free to get it to you. Please consider giving a small donation to help spread these courses around the world to those most in need. The link is in the description. See you in the next lesson.